Hey everybody, Eustace the Monk here, returning from my short, unintentional hiatus with a game review that may very well turn out to be the most boring video I've done to date. Well, hopefully not. Well, at least visually. Top-down, turn-based card games lack a certain oomph or visual vigor that makes for a good video. However, despite this game's rather plodding exterior, it possesses a lot of deep gameplay that I think is interesting and worthy of discussion. So without further ado, this is Thea the Awakening! A century ago, a horrendous cataclysm had engulfed the world of Thea. The great cosmic tree had burnt to the ground, plunging Thea into perpetual darkness. Awful creatures stalked the land, and the world was basically a hellhole where people could barely survive. Now it's 100 years later, and the sun has inexplicably returned. You play as one of the gods from Slavic mythology who is awakening along with Thea, and your task is to guide and rebuild humanity. One of the puzzles you must solve is what caused the cosmic tree to burn. Another problem you need to solve is that you have reason to believe that the return of the sun might be temporary, so you need to sort that out as well. This forms the building blocks of an interesting survival/strategy game that's really like no other. It also has roguelite elements as well. You have a central village and you send out expeditions to gather resources, explore the world, and fight off threats. Each villager has a profession: crafter, fighter, gatherer, medic, sage, etc. There's a lot of locked professions that become available after certain conditions are met. You typically keep the civilians behind in the village, doing gathering and crafting tasks to make sure everyone has enough food and fuel. Each person eats one food per turn, and each consumes one fuel, so it's a good thing to prioritize getting a good stockpile of these resources early in the game. The game interface is pretty easy, just drag the character over to the gathering task here. Each resource needs to accumulate a certain number of points to gather a set of that given resource. The better a character is at gathering, the more points they get per turn, so they accumulate resources faster. You can assign more people to a given resource to gather it faster as well. Now, there's several food and fuel types. Basic veggies are gathered from the land, but you can craft different food types. This is typically more efficient as you'll get more food than you put in, due to the magic of video game. And to do crafting or construction tasks, just create the task through this interface here and drag the crafters into the task. Depending on the specific resources you drag into each of these required categories, you can get different results or recipes. So with 2 meat and 2 veggie, you'll get 8 of these meat-veggie stew things. Also, the more food types that you have, the more benefits you'll get stat-wise above and beyond simply eating the food. So it's usually a good idea to be continually making prepared food. You'll quickly need to send out expeditions to explore the world, find new resources, and figure out what happened to the cosmic tree. Each expedition will need food and fuel like your settlement. The more people in the party, the more food the expedition will need to stay away from the settlement longer. Exploring the land, your expeditions will go on all sorts of adventures and have all kinds of events. I'm going to be purposefully vague and not show very much footage from these events because the way they're woven into the gameplay is actually pretty awesome. This one with the traveling dwarf has happened fairly early on each of my games, so I don't really think it's much of a spoiler. Some events are random, some come from exploring, and some are story missions. These initial ones are the game's tutorial, where this bat satyr goblin guy named Theodore teaches you the basics of the game by sending you on some intro missions. Combat and other challenges are handled in this turn-based card battle game. Each party member is represented by a card with their stats on it. Half are randomly dealt into the offensive stack to the left and can directly engage the enemy. The other half are randomly dealt into the support stack on the right, where they can't directly engage the enemy but can use special abilities like moving your offensive cards to the front of the line or add to their armor. You can move them to the combat row from the support stack, but they'll be unable to act in the first combat phase. You can re-deal the cards once per turn, so if all your warriors get stuck into the back rank, you might be able to do something about it. The player and the computer then each take turns playing cards into the row down the center of the screen before the 2 combat phases. Once all the cards have been played, the 2 combat phases take place where each character gets a turn to attack the enemy card closest to them, starting from the left and moving to the right. It sounds pretty simple, but there's a lot of deep strategy to this combat system. Do you have your support cards rush into the fray, or do you use their special abilities to buff your main fighters? It's a surprisingly intricate system that I really can't do much justice in a short video like this. There's other challenges apart from straight combat. You sometimes have to hold negotiations with creatures, or maybe fight off some illness in the village. These challenges use different sets of stats, so for example you want to bring your smarter, charismatic characters to the negotiation challenges rather than the brutish warrior types. The artwork is incredible, the music is pretty cool, the event system is integrated really well into the game, so it feels like interesting things are really happening out there. And most of the game is actually narrated, which is pretty sweet as well. The narrator is fair to midland, not the best, but certainly not the worst either, especially for an early access game. There's a somewhat roguelike element to the game as well. Each time you play, even partially, accumulates experience for the god that you played as. As you level up each god, they get more powerful, and you get more bonuses and powers. And you unlock new gods to play as well. Thea is actually an amazing game. It's a real hidden gem. I definitely recommend it if you enjoy turn-based strategy and are looking for something different.